Now, there are many things we could talk about, but I could tell you a little bit about the National Youth Gathering, but we have some young people here today, the two young ladies who came here, or came to Houston with my wife and I, to be part of that. And maybe as a way of an introduction, I think a lie that a lot of our young people can believe is that they're alone in their faith. And I think they would tell you very clearly that being in a stadium with around 20,000 other youth and adults who know and love Jesus was a real boost to their faith and a pushback against that lie. They don't feel as alone, even as they go back to their place. So, Natalie, Riley, why don't you come forward and share a little bit with us? And when I say a little bit, they have so many stories, but you'll only hear a few of today, if that can be believed. Share a little bit with us about the National Youth Gathering.
Hello? Is it on? Okay, so hi everybody, how we doing? Okay, so as most of you probably know, we recently got back from the National Youth Gathering on Wednesday, and so we had such an incredible time, and we learned so much, and it was really a life-altering experience, and we would love to tell you all about our fun experience. So we're going to start where all good stories begin, at the beginning.
All right, so on the first day, we were at the airport, and this is us at the airport, so yep, not much here.
But also, we didn't know much about what we were going into because we'd never been to the youth gathering before. And so we were just curious and praying about what we were going to learn, what we were going to experience. And boy, did we not know the extensiveness of what we were going to experience. And so throughout our presentation, we have little trivia questions that we'd love if you'd participate in. So Riley, could you tell us the first one?
All right, so the first one is, how many districts does the LCMS have in the U.S.? If you think the answer is A, 33, raise your hand. If you think the answer is B, 34, raise your hand. If you think the answer is C, 35, and D, 36. All right, so the right answer is 35 in the 35 districts that the LCMS has in the U.S.
So at every night of the gathering, there was the mass event where all 19,000 of us, stayed at Minute Maid Park, and we had such a fun time. There was an excellent house band, and the music was incredible. It inspired me to come back to church and sing a little bit louder, which I hopefully did yesterday. There was also a lot of fun games and speakers. So one of the nights, Pastor Zach Zender, who we read his book, The Red Letter Challenge, he talked about middle words and about how middle words are like the middle parts of our life that can feel hard, where there can be some questioning in our lives, but about how middle words are not final words, and how they don't have to define us. And then another night, the other person who was leading the mass events, Deaconess Naomi Guerra, she talked about brokenness and about how there are many things in our life that can cause us to question our worth, and that there are things that are hard to go through with suffering, but about how God creates us to be resilient and that we are strong in Him. And so she talked about Kansugi Art. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but it's a Japanese art form where when pottery is broken, these Kansugi artists take a gold paste and put it back together, and so it makes it more beautiful than before. And she talked about how God is the ultimate Kansugi artist and puts us all back together, all those broken pieces, and makes us more beautiful in the process. And so our next trivia question is, during the National Youth Gathering Burger War, what was voted as the best burger place? So A, Whataburger. Anybody? All right. What about B, Culver's? And C, In-N-Out. All right, so Culver's was actually chosen as the best burger place over much conflict. We were all very opinionated, and it got very loud during that part.
All right, so on a few of the nights, we had early entry to the park, which was not so early entry. So what was the longest we waited in line for food? A is 1 hour and 15 minutes. B, 1 hour and 30 minutes. Yeah, C, an hour and 45 minutes, and D, 2 hours. So we waited in line an hour and 30 minutes, was the longest we waited. And by the time we had it, the mass event had already started, so we were not too happy about that fact, but, we kept going. Okay, so the first night of Bible study, morning, we talked about how God creates, and throughout each day we had a little symbol that our leaders, Dave and Emily, would tell us to draw in the Bible. So that day we drew a plant symbol, and we learned that because of Jesus, our life story is unfolding in all things, and that Christ is creating in all things, which was the theme of the gathering. And Christ doesn't create junk. So those little things that we think that we may not like very much, God put on the earth for a reason.
So then our next day of Bible study was about how God reconciles, and they talked about how the word reconciles means the restoration between friendly relations, and about how God not only reconciles us to the Lord, but how God is reconciling everything and making everything right. And we used a heart symbol for that day. And then finally we learned about how God reigns and about how there's suffering, and that's unavoidable, but God is still ruling and reigning in all those things. And so the symbol we used was a crown, and I really loved the analogy our leaders used about how God doesn't reign in waffles, he reigns in pancakes. Let me explain. So waffles was meaning like different squares of our life. So for me, I love reading, that could be a square. And I love singing, that could be another square, all the different things that make up the things that I love about my life. But God reigns isn't just one little square. He reigns in pancakes. He is in all those things, all the little pieces. He just is in all of them, and he rules and reigns in all of it. So then our next trivia is two truths and a lie. I don't know how many of you have played that, but there's going to be one statement up there that is untrue. So the first one was, we met a published poet. Anybody? Yeah, one of them is a lie. Sorry. What about we met a published author? And we met a published journalist. All right, so yeah, we did not meet a published journalist, but we did meet a published poet. His name is Mr. Tanner Olson. It was really cool to talk with him. We actually got a little booklet that has some of his poems and prayers that he's written. And then we also met a published author, Pastor Jeff Leininger, who we will talk about a little bit later. Okay, so then there's also these sessions that we went to throughout the day where different speakers would be in different rooms, and we'd be able to choose which ones we went to, and Riley and I had so much fun deciding which ones we were going to go to, so I wanted to talk about two of them. So I don't know if we have any Marvel fans in here, but I am a huge Marvel fan, and Mr. Lee Hope is who we went to go see, and he talked about how there are many biblical themes all throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so there are a few things that really blew my mind. So some of the themes that he talked about were forgiveness and redemption, sacrifice, and death to life. So one of the things that really just surprised me so much was when he talked about how Thanos, who is the main villain in the two movies, Infinity War and Endgame, how the word Thanos means death, and about how at first, death conquers, and I don't want to spoil anything, but in Infinity War, Thanos is able to wipe out half the population. But then in Endgame, Iron Man, Tony Stark, is able to kill Thanos, and about how Iron Man can be synonymous with Jesus, and about how, like Iron Man killed Thanos, Jesus killed death. And about how another funny thing would be that Jesus' right-hand man was Peter, and Iron Man, Tony Stark's right-hand man, was Spider-Man, also known as Peter Parker. And then the other one that I wanted to talk about was all work is church work. And so that's talking about how whatever we decide to do in life, it's meaningful. And so he talked about the Excel people, and he talked about the food truck people. So what that means is the Excel people, they like using their spreadsheets, they plan everything out, and they know what they want to do. And then there's the food truck people who aren't really sure what they want to do or are still thinking about it, but haven't come to a concrete decision. So we all know what vocations are, right? They're jobs that God has given us. So for me, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister and I'm a child of God. So if you could, for just a few minutes, turn to someone around you and say maybe one or two vocations that you have. So. All right, so I think we had a little bit of time to talk about our vocations, and really one of the things that I took away from this is that all of our vocations are valuable. God has equipped us with the tools to fulfill those vocations, and God is good in all of those things, and he has put us in those places for good reasons.
Okay. So how many steps did we walk on our longest stay in Houston? If you think it's A, around 18,000, raise your hand. B, around 14,000. C, around 20,000. And D, around 17,000. Okay, so we walked around 20,000 steps on our longest stay, and that was about 8 miles every day as well. Okay, so the next session we went to was called Bigger, Faster, Stronger, Calling All Athletes, and we chose this one because I'm an athlete. I play volleyball year-round, and I play badminton in the spring. And the main thing that the speaker taught us was that in the same way that I have to work out every day and eat healthy and focus on getting better, is that we have to have rhythms with God as well, and how we have to pray every day and work on our relationship, just like how athletes have to work on their game every day. So, and then another one that we went to was called Who is My Neighbor? And the main story that we focused on was the Good Samaritan, and how at the end of the day in that story, the Samaritan wasn't looked at as an enemy. He was looked at as a neighbor, as the same kind of man that the other men were. So.
All right, now our next two truths and a lie is we went to see a band. Anybody think that's a lie? All right, what about we went to see an illusionist? Or we went to see a comedian? All right, so the lie was we went to see a band. We actually went to see about 3 bands. And so in this next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the different people we saw. So in the upper left-hand corner, that's Zach Murs. He was the illusionist. Mind-blowing tricks. It was really, really cool to see him. And one of the tricks that I really liked was at the very end, he talked about his childhood and about how when his uncle took him to go to a carnival, and he wanted to have a balloon, and his uncle got one for him because he was a little shy, and so he used a balloon to illustrate how sometimes we can be broken. He took off pieces of the balloon string and talked about how, yeah, those things can break us down, but God makes us whole. So at the end, he revealed a full string attached to the balloon, which was really cool. And then we also went to see Apollo LTD. I don't know how many of you have heard about them, but they were incredible. We loved listening to them. Their music was inspirational, and we have been listening to it constantly at home.
The comedian that we went to see, his name was David Dean, and we all got a lot of laughs out of him. He was very funny. So if you ever get a chance to see him, I highly recommend. And then another band that we went to see was the opening act for Zach Murs, the illusionist, and they were really good. But the most interesting thing about them was that their whole mission was going undercover in places where human trafficking occurs, and they try to find proof that people are being bought and sold, and which is highly illegal. And so they find proof that this is occurring. And another thing that they do, which is really great, is that in the places where child labor is occurring, that they give them money and they pay them for their work, and the merchandise that they sell at their concerts is made by these children in these places.
So next we're going to talk a little bit about the exhibit floor. So the exhibit floor is basically this huge, and I mean a huge room full of booths and different fun things you can do. There was a recreation place, so you could do like pool noodle hockey, and there were volleyball. There was a lot of other things that were down there. And so honestly, it was so much fun. Riley's favorite part of that was the pins. So my mom can show you some. So there are these pins that different booths hand out, and we just covered our backpacks with these pins. It was super fun. There were other, so, oh yeah, we got our, that's all over on our backpack. And then also, one of the most fun things I think we did down there was to go to the KFUO booth, which is basically a radio station, and Riley and I, and then my mom and dad got to record headers for the station that will hopefully be on the radio. And then we got to get some nice free hats, and so it was so much fun being down there and talking to different people, learning about the different Concordias and learning about different mission trips and different places. It was super cool.
Okay, so how many pins total do you think we collected as a group? So if you think the answer is A, 38, B, 44, C, 49, and D, 53. So we collected 44 total pins, but they were very meaningful. We love our pins very much. Okay, so the next thing that we did, each group has to complete a service act, which they have inside and outside. But the one that we decided to complete was called Lutheran Braille Workers. And the whole mission of that was working with another group to create the books of the Bible in Braille. So our group was working on Romans. And these books get sent to churches who can't afford to buy a Bible in fully Braille, so they get sent single books at a time. So yeah, that was the whole mission of that. Oh yeah, right there is a sheet. So we're going to be out in the back, so if you want to go and see that.
Okay, and then our next trivia question is, how many Concordia universities are there currently? A, 4, B, 5, C, 6, and D, 7. So there are actually 7 Concordia universities currently open. I think there are about 3 that closed, but I'm not going to name all the different ones. But I had to put Concordia University Chicago up there because my parents went there, and so it was super fun to visit the Concordia booth, and they got their own different pins that they got that were special because they were alumni. So next we want to talk about the truck yard and stamps. So each of the different states got their own event. And so we had our Illinois district event where there were 3 different districts that were involved. We got to go to this place called the truck yard. Super fun. We got to eat a meal there, which was delicious. And then also one of the things that I really loved is we got to do this fun bingo where you have to walk around and ask people about if they, fit the requirements of something. So like if they love deep dish pizza, share a favorite sports team, or if their parent is an alumnus. And so that was super fun, and Riley actually has a funny story to tell about that.
So the first people that we went up to were these girls right next to us, and we asked them where they were from, and they said Northern Illinois. And we were like, oh, where are you guys from? And they said, a small town up north. No, not a lot of people know where it is. And we were like, oh, well, maybe we do. And they said Orland Park. So we told them we're from Mokina, one town over. And then I asked them where they went to school. And they, out of all places, out of the 20,000 people that we could have met, we met people who go to Lincoln Way Central. Me and Natalie go, or Lincoln Way East, I'm sorry. Me and Natalie go to Lincoln Way Central. So out of everybody that we could have met there, the most memorable people were from one town over. So.
And then also, during our time at the exhibit floor, we had to, so there's the thing in our guidebooks, which we got, and it had a bunch of places for stamps. And so we had to go to a place that had a bunch of all the different districts represented. And so, funny enough, we thought we were just going to walk up there and get all our stamps because you could have enter like a raffle to get a $50 gift card to the store for the different merch for the gathering. And so we thought we were, going to go up there and get our stamps. But no, we had to answer trivia for all the different districts there are. And so it took Riley and I about an hour to go through all of them. And so there were some memorable trivia questions, but it was super fun. We got to work together with a few other groups, and it was just super fun.
Okay, so what was the highest real feel in Houston, Texas, where we were for a week? So if you think it's 98 degrees, 100 degrees, 111 degrees, or 122 degrees. So the highest real feel was 122 degrees, and we were outside walking in the sun at that time, so yeah.
Yes, so as you can probably hear, it was very hot. Next, I wanted to talk about For King and Country. I don't know if any of you have heard about them, but there are a band made up of two brothers, mainly from Australia, and it was incredible to go see them in person. My papa's a really big fan of them, and we love listening to them. It was so moving and inspirational to listen to their music, to listen to them speak, and it was so great. And so there was one of the songs that we sang that he asked everyone to turn their phone flashlights on. So in the top picture, I took a picture of all the different people with their phone flashlights on, and so it was really cool, like my dad was talking about, to see that we are not alone, that there's so many people out there who have the same faith that we do, and that, yeah, there's so many people, and it honestly, to lead into our next trivia question, it got very loud. So, what was the loudest amount of decibels you track? So decibels are basically the amount of noise in numbers. So the average is basically between 60 to 70 when we were talking. So anyone think A, 107 as the loudest? B, 111, C, 113, D, 118. So the answer is C, 113. It got very, very loud in there. But honestly, I didn't mind that much because it meant that everyone was raising their voices to praise God. So that was super cool.
Okay, so then late nights were very popular when we were there. So if you think the latest we went to bed was around 11 p.m., raise your hand. 12 p.m., 1 a.m., or 2 a.m. So the latest we went to bed was 1 a.m. on our latest night, but we were close to it most of the other nights, so.
And next, I really wanted to talk about probably one of my favorite parts of the gathering was being able to see some of my old friends and see some of my parents' old friends. So in the top left-hand corner, those are the Koshmans. Uncle Nick and Auntie Rachel, we're not related to them, but they're my godparents. And then Lucy, who's in like the bluish shirt in the middle, is my parents' goddaughter. And so we're very close with them, but I have not seen them in about 7 years. So that was the first time I was able to see them, and it was a happy reunion. A funny story, we were going down the stairs to try to get out of Minute Maid Park, and all of a sudden we hear a loud, "Shell us!" And we turn around, and Uncle Nick comes barreling at us, just giving us hugs. It was incredible and super fun. On the right is my good friend Lena. We got to run into her. She was with a group of 70 people, so it was very hard to try to find her, so I'm so glad we were able to do that. And then on the middle left is Emily Wilson. She comes here to our church. She was with her group, and she told us all about the incredible mission trips she's been on and all the incredible work she's doing. In the center is Pastor Jeff Leininger, the author. He's actually very, very good friends of my parents. He was the head pastor, and he still is, at Concordia, Chicago. So we talked with him for around half an hour, and he was trying to bribe Riley and I to go to Concordia University, Chicago, with a whole lot of fun stuff. On the very bottom left is Shelly. She is a good friend of my parents, and she was also a Bible study leader. On the very right is Emily, our Bible study leader. So we got to talk with the two of them for a little bit. It was super cool to hear what they had to say. And then on the bottom center is Paige. She worked at Concordia, Chicago, and is also a good friend of my parents. And funny enough, we got to sit next to her on the plane back home, and so it was really, really fun to see all these people and have a fun reunion with them.
Okay, so here are some of the greatest memories. So on the first night, we sat on the deck. They had like a little area where you could sit at the hotel. with lights. It was beautiful. You could see the whole city. But we played card games, which I had never played before, so it was a first for me. I was not very good at them, but I learned. That's something we did a lot. And then we went to this really cute pastry shop, a Frank's pastry shop called Mademoiselle Louise. And they just had so many good things there. So that was really great. And then some other things are just pictures of things that we did on our time there. So yeah.
Okay, and then finally we have one more trivia question. So for two truths and a lie, our flight was delayed. Anybody think that's a lie? Our shuttle driver never came. Anybody? And our flight was canceled. All right, so the lie was our flight was canceled. Thankfully, that did not happen. But when we were checking in with our luggage, we saw that our flight was delayed. We were like, oh no, what's going to happen? And we asked the lady to check it. And it was delayed by like 3 minutes. So we were very relieved when we found out that it's not going to be too late. And then, yes, true, our shuttle driver never came, so we had to frantically call an Uber to get to the airport. And so, yeah, that was pretty exciting. And finally, we wanted to thank you all so much for all of your support, whether it was verbally or monetarily. We really, really appreciate all of the work you put into helping support us so that we could have such an incredible time at the youth gathering. And I also wanted to thank my parents and then Riley's parents for always supporting us throughout our faith and for working so hard to make sure everything worked well. So can we give them a round of applause? And then also, finally, we wanted, so at the end of all of our Bible studies, we kind of forgot about that, we had to read a passage from Colossians, which was our theme verses. So if Riley could read that for us.
Okay, so this is Colossians 3, verse 12 through 17. And as Natalie said, we ended every Bible study with this. Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him.
And finally, wanted to end it out. Every time at the mass event, we ended with a final blessing. So if you would, please place your hands out in front like this. Slowly place them over your heart. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And listen to these words. This heart, this life, this story, every story is held by the one who holds all things. Let me say that again. This heart, this life, this story, every story is held by the one who holds all things. Beautiful, right? So I know we talked a lot, and there's still many more stories to be told. And so if you'd like to, come visit us after service or in the upcoming weeks ahead. We have so many more stories, and if you have any more questions. And also, I'd like to leave with a little invitation and challenge. So if you would, each day, maybe take the time to pray over the fact that God is in all things. Maybe it's a situation, or maybe it's something like your cup of coffee in the morning, thanking God for this drink that is going to hopefully keep you awake for the next few hours, or maybe you're a gardener and you want to thank God for the beautiful flowers that are growing, and for thinking about how he nourishes those flowers, even if it's hot, even if it faces a lot of hard things, and thinking about how God nourishes us and keeps us growing even in the midst of hard things. So yeah, just take time to think about that and know that God is in all things and about how beautiful that is. So yeah, thank you.
Those girls did all of that. They started planning on the plane. I know it was a lot. Thanks for hanging in there with us, but it was so amazing to have a front row seat to how God was working in their hearts and lives. So thank you for all your support. There wasn't a day that went by that we did not recognize how thankful we were for the support here back at home. So thank you for everything in the last 10 months. We'll take a break and we'll get ready for 2025 in New Orleans, but woo, not yet.
I hope you can see the passion that we have in our young people. It was a small group, and that gave us some flexibility to do some things, but it also gave us the opportunity to invest in one another and to be family for a little bit. And that's certainly an expression of what we see here at Emmanuel. So thank you once again for your support and encouragement.